I actually heard something along these lines, which is that basically, right, the problem is obviously esports itself is big in Korea and still is big to this day. But I've basically, as far as I can tell, it was big in a different way there. Because when I actually lived there for a few years and I asked loads of people that I met, especially people who you wouldn't think would know about esports, like did they know esports? Most of them didn't know esports actually, but they knew StarCraft 1. And that was the thing. What everyone told me was StarCraft was like a cultural phenomenon where it's like everyone when they were 12 played the game basically. And so everyone sort of knew it in their past. I mean, I would make the equivalent, even though it's like not a great analogy, but people will get it. Like even in the West, if someone's not a gamer, they probably know like Pokemon or something. They probably played that when they were a kid, it's culturally, but it doesn't mean they know every game. They're not a hardcore gamer. So the key difference here is, while like some people, if they're into esports, would know the big esports stars now and might follow the games, back then I've heard that basically StarCraft 1, when it popped off, for real, you could like, girls in nightclubs and shit would just be like, "Oh, you play StarCraft? Yeah, I do as well. Like, my brother does or something." Like, was it as crazy? Was it as ubiquitous as this in the whole scene?
Yeah, it was really crazy. Actually, almost everybody we met was a fan and knew us, and it was insane. Like, it was just like you would just go to a bar and like usually the bartender know you, and then they make special show for you guys because you're in town, and like all the girls, like when you tell them you play StarCraft, they all knew and they all play too. They all have a race. They're like, oh yeah, I'm Terran, I'm Poros, and so on. So it was just like, it was much bigger than like any sport back now, I think, because it was really cultural phenomenon. I think it was the only game back in the days in Korea, right? Because there was when Korea, like the internet cafe were popping everywhere, and I think back in the days, like Quake, it wasn't allowed because it was like supposedly too violent. So pretty much everybody was playing StarCraft, and because they didn't also have that much space, because in Seoul in Korea, it's very densely populated. So pretty much like all the kids, when they're done with school, they just go with their friends to instead of going playing sport or doing anything else, they would just go to internet cafe and they would all play StarCraft together. So it was like really crazy. Actually, it felt like a different world, like lived in Korea and like everybody knows about StarCraft, and it's just like the more standard thing. You have like back then I had fans who were like 40 or 45 years old guys who were like stopping me in the middle of the street to congratulate me and to ask for an autograph. And then a few times I would go back to France, and then like some guys ask what I'm doing. I'm like a professional gamer, and they're like, "What is this?" Like,
Sure.
"Oh, it's not a job. Get out of here!" Like,
Oh, well, that one thing I want to ask was this: along these lines, right? You were already known, actually, when you were just at the World Cyber Games, for having this flair. So, like, famously, like, just like now, you always had, like, dyed hair and stuff, and you used to famously, like, wear shades even while you were playing, like, Oakley sunglasses, right? You already would have been popular like Guillaume was, because you were a foreigner and you were winning in Korea, and Koreans, actually, it's very weird, because on the one hand, they can be very insular, but as a result, if someone comes to Korea and embraces Korea, they love them, like, they go super crazy for that shit. So, do you think, actually, that, like, your kind of showmanship played into your popularity as well?
it played a little bit, yeah. I think so, and I think I definitely took advantage of it, and it kind of it made it easier for us foreigner to some extent, because it was like we were more popular with a sponsor, because basically the Koreans, unless you're like Yellow Boxer or like Breach or like, unless you're like top 5 players, there was no interest of sponsoring any Korean player, right? That's also what made the game so hard. Like StarCraft is just so hard, because if you're not like top 5 or 10 in the world, you cannot really make a living out of it. So I kind of took advantage of it, and I think my showmanship and the fact that I was already different, of course, and that I did some effort to look even more different, then it helped. And like it helps getting some invites, like especially early on before I got. Before I got big results in the Star League and so on, it helps a lot, because for like there were like a lot of these exhibition show on the TV network, and if you look different and you're like, if you have like very different personality and style, then you're more likely to get invited, because it's more fun for the show, I guess.
Yeah, actually, that's something I was going to ask you about. I noticed even when you weren't the best player, you were always getting invited to those invite matches. Like, they were always putting you against Boxer in another game, or Nada, or Yellow, all the big names, right? They wanted to just see everyone play against you, basically.
Yeah, it was because of the image and also because we're foreigners, and like I guess also Koreans, they like to. So we still had a lot of fun, even though it was nothing compared to like Yellow and Boxer. But also, I guess they want to showcase they're the best in the world. So if there's like really good foreigner,
Right, sure.
and they can still beat him, it's like
Okay.
how good Koreans are. It's so I guess everybody was happy with this situation, right?